If you were going to go to court, what degree of confidence would you have in this photograph?
I would say that these pictures of Amelia Earhart compare favorably to this picture from the Marshall Islands. I usually go from not likely to very likely to extremely likely. And I'd say this is very likely.
Amelia Earhart's disappearance has been unsolved for 80 years. In the new documentary, Amelia Earhart, The Lost Evidence, airing tonight on the History Channel, new evidence may explain just what happened to the legendary aviator. Joining me now is Sean Henry, former FBI Executive Assistant Director and one of the documentary's lead investigators. Sean, thank you very much for being here. This is an incredible story. How did it come about? Where did that photograph come from?
Well, Les Kinney is a researcher who's been involved in the search for Amelia Earhart for more than 10 years. He's something he's just taken on as a passion of his. He's been searching through the National Archives, the U.S. National Archives, for years, looking for any documents from the Navy, Naval Intelligence, U.S. military that might indicate what happened to her. And in the course of his search of the National Archives, he came up with several documents, but he also came up with this photo.
And this photo was sitting in the National Archives?
Presumably for decades.
For decades, and no one knew it was there. And so, why do you think that there's still this fascination with Amelia Earhart?
You know, I think Amelia Earhart, the story goes back so many years, but because there was never any conclusion put together, I think people have always wondered what happened to her. I grew up thinking that she crash landed in the ocean and likely drowned, which was the common narrative.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I grew up knowing or was taught, but that's...
There's no evidence that she crashed. There's no debris. There's never been a plane found. No bodies were found in the ocean, yet that was the common narrative. Here we've now got a picture that shows, I believe, that she is in the Marshall Islands, Jalhuit, with her navigator, Fred Noonan. And that photograph corroborates stories that the Marshallese have talked about for 80 years. They've talked about her being there. There are multiple people that I've interviewed. I went to the Marshall Islands, and this has just been the common narrative in the Marshall Islands, that they know she landed there. They know she was taken by a ship called the Koshu, a Japanese ship that had picked her up in Jalhuit and then took her to Saipan. And there are people who have been telling this story, again, for 80 years, that she was picked up in Jalhuit by the Koshu, and then sure enough, we've got a photo that shows her in Jalhuit with the Koshu in the background.
And correct me if I'm wrong, so the photograph was found in the National Archives, but also in the National Archives there's a document where there's a quote that says Earhart was a prisoner in the Marshall Islands. So the common narrative is her plane crashed, she disappeared, but right there in the archives it says, no, she crashed, she was a prisoner in the Marshall Islands.
So I haven't reviewed that document. People have been looking for it for a long time, and I haven't seen what that says. But the fact that it refers to her being in the Marshall Islands, there are also some intercepted communications between the Japanese military and the Japanese attaché in Washington, where they talk about her being in the Marshall Islands. That was intercepted and decrypted by the United States government. So there are a number of indicators that she was there. There are narratives that have been told by dozens of people in the Marshall Islands that this occurred there. None of them knew this photo existed, of course, and then that photo comes to light that seems to indicate that, yes, in fact, she's there.
Okay, so of course, two questions come to mind. Why didn't the American government tell us this? Why didn't the Japanese government tell us this?
And I think those are questions for the next half of this investigation. We've, I believe, conclusively put her in the Marshall Islands, that she landed safely and she was held by the Japanese. That, I think we can say, after we look at this, the totality of all the evidence that occurred. Why did the Japanese government hold her? Why did they not talk to the U.S. about it? Why did the U.S. government, if there are these records in the National Archives, not come forward? Those are questions that are unanswered. There's a lot of supposition and a lot of speculation. We don't have time to go through all that right now, but I think there's a lot more to this story.
So, real quickly, what is the Japanese government saying now? I mean, I'm assuming you went to them and said, hey, What do you got to say?
Actually, NBC's actually gone out and talked to the Japanese government, multiple agencies within the government. They said they have no records of Amelia Earhart being in Japanese custody. Of course, that wouldn't be unusual. It's common knowledge that records were all destroyed after World War II. Certainly nobody who would have been alive at the time is still alive. So there is a lot more investigation to be done. One thing I can tell you is since this first aired last week, we have gotten dozens of phone calls and emails from people who said they've got additional information.
Wow.
Their grandfather saw something, they found documents, so we'll be pursuing that.
This is a great story. I'm very much looking forward to watching it tonight. Thank you very much, Sean Henry. Amelia Earhart, The Lost Evidence airs tonight at 9 p.m. Eastern on History. That's our show for today. Joy Reid will be back next week. Up next, Alex Witt has the latest reaction to Donald Trump's meeting with Vladimir Putin. More news at the top of the hour.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.